Hey everyone, welcome back to Common Ground. So this is going to be the start of a new series I do. It's going to come out maybe in the middle of the week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whenever I have time. It's going to be it's going to be some updates on the 2020 election. I'm going to go through polls. I'm going to go through polls of the Democratic primaries, the GOP primaries, and also the general election. And then I'm going to feature maybe one or two news headlines about the 2020 election. So I really hope you enjoy it. Now, this, unlike the Common Ground series, is not going to be scripted. It's my genuine reaction. I'm new to these polls. I just took screenshots, and I'm going to go through them as it's going to be my genuine reaction. Obviously, the Common Ground series, I do research. It's scripted, but this will be my genuine reactions. So first, let's go through the Democratic primary polls. This is from Real Clear Politics, and from the looks of it, according to a poll from yesterday, March 26th, which is a Tuesday, it seems to be that Joe Biden has a commanding lead over the rest of the pack, with Bernie Sanders being number two, and then there being a wide gulf between Bernie Sanders and other people. It seems to me that Kamala Harris, Beto O'Rourke, and Elizabeth Warren are sort of that next group. They're all pretty close to each other. And then later, there's a lot of other candidates. Obviously, there's a lot of candidates in the Democratic primary. But something that's very interesting to me is when I look at the Iowa poll, how much it changes from the general sort of attitude among the Democratic primary, how Joe Biden is still in first, and Bernie Sanders has about the same amount as he did in the general poll, but there's a lot more parity. Joe Biden's a lot closer to Bernie Sanders, and Kamala Harris has a few more points. Elizabeth Warren has a couple more. Very interesting, actually, is Pete Buttigieg. I still am not fantastic at pronouncing his name. Actually has 9% more, which is very interesting, actually. It's quite curious how it changes from the general to Iowa. But it seems to me that in most polls I've seen, Joe Biden has a pretty solid lead, with Bernie Sanders being clearly number two, whereas the rest of the candidates maybe shift. There's sometimes I've seen Beto O'Rourke being third. I've seen Kamala Harris being third. Elizabeth Warren is still in the race. So it's just very interesting, the updates there. Now, for the Republican primary, obviously polling is less frequent in this for obvious reasons. Donald Trump is currently president, and who knows whether he'll run again or not. But from the most recent poll on Real Clear Politics from February 28th, it's from New Hampshire, and President Trump obviously has a commanding lead. Something that's very interesting is that John Kasich is very clearly in second place there, and I guess it makes sense to me. Now, if you'll remember from the last election rather, John Kasich from Ohio, he was one of the sort of 4 or 5 remaining Republican candidates, along with obviously Donald Trump, now President Trump, Ted Cruz, and Marco Rubio. And if you'll remember, during the Republican debates, there was a lot of squabbling, a lot of ad hominem attacks, and John Kasich tried to be the person who was maybe the most calm, tried to stay out of the insulting. So it's very interesting to me how he really is gaining in popularity. And from obviously a poll that's very far away, or that was pretty long ago, from November 20th, Mitt Romney was actually in second place, which is very interesting. Now, obviously, that's much older poll, so we can trust the New Hampshire one. But then again, it obviously varies from state to the rest of the public's perception. But it seems to me that President Trump overall is obviously polling the best. He's clearly the front runner for the Republican nominee. Now, for the general election, so from the most recent polls on Real Clear Politics from March 25th, these were from Iowa, and it seems it's comparing Trump to various Democratic candidates. And something that's very interesting to me is how it fluctuates depending on the candidate. You would think that maybe the Democrats would support the Democrat the most of the time, and the Republicans would support President Trump or the Republican most of the time. But no, it definitely fluctuates several points each way. And it seems to me that Joe Biden has the largest lead over President Trump. Still, it's relatively close, but Joe Biden has the largest lead. And I suppose it makes sense. Obviously, Joe Biden would be considered most likely the most moderate of the candidates for the Democratic presidential nominee. Obviously, he hasn't formally entered the race yet, but should he enter the race, which seems probable to me, and from what I've read, he would be the most moderate of the candidates. Now, something that surprised me just looking at this poll is that Bernie Sanders actually has a lead over President Trump, which seems very interesting to me. Obviously, we can all agree that Bernie Sanders is a candidate who's very far to the left, very left-leaning on these issues, a democratic socialist, and it seems very interesting to me how actually Bernie Sanders has the lead over President Trump. I presume that a lot of people who were in the middle, unsure of who to vote for when it came down to Bernie versus or Bernie Sanders versus Donald Trump would lean towards Donald Trump being maybe Donald Trump is less far to the right than Bernie Sanders is to the left. Obviously, Donald Trump is not maybe not a true conservative. He obviously has some conservative stances, but he's not a true conservative. For example, Mike Pence is very far to the right, but Donald Trump obviously has sort of different stances, and Bernie Sanders is very clearly far to the left. So it's very interesting to me how Bernie Sanders still has the lead over President Trump, and Donald Trump has it's still actually very close, but he has a lead over Kamala Harris, Elizabeth Warren, and Cory Booker, all by very small margins. So this race, as of now, it's very close. Now, for the news of the week, it's going to be about Stacey Abrams. Now, if you'll remember, Stacey Abrams lost a race in Georgia, and she is black and female, and a lot of people were saying that Joe Biden might choose, or Joe Biden and Stacey Abrams might agree to be his vice president or his running mate, and this would be to appeal to a decently sized portion of the Democratic base who are increasingly calling for a female and a person of color to be in office, president, vice president, whatever. And people were thinking that Joe Biden, who's obviously neither a female nor a person of color, would choose Stacey Abrams, who is both, to maybe sort of appeal to these people in a sense. And it's very interesting how Stacey Abrams says that, and according to Politico, says that she will not enter the 2020 primaries. Biden's running mate. She stated on looks like The View. She said, quote, "I think you don't run for second place." And something that I noticed from that quote that I'm noticing now, it seems by the connotation that she wants to run in the future, saying, "I think you don't run for second place," implies that she might want to run in the future for first place. Now, that would obviously mean president. So maybe we can expect a Stacey Abrams run in the future, but it seems to me that for the 2020 election, at least, Stacey Abrams will not play really a large role running or being a running mate. So that's it for this episode. Thank you all so much for watching. You can expect a new Common Ground episode over the weekend, most likely Sunday. Thank you. Please like, subscribe, and tell your friends.